Time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
Our guys are playing well. Came off a great performance in San Diego. Could be more pleased with how our guys prepared leading up to it. I thought we really went into both games with a great mindset, and just our guys were comfortable. I thought our defense in the first half of the Auburn game was as good as it can be, and obviously we used that to score some points. And then we played well in the second half with a big lead and made shots and just did a lot of really good things in the game.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, here on a very coolish Wednesday evening in South Carolina. Welcome into the program. Phil Kornblut, the Professor Tom Hayes, Brian Leonard with you, Will Pelagic on his way to Omaha for the Sweet 16 to cover the Clemson Tigers. Tigers on their way as well. The media in South Carolina covering Clemson, heading out that way. And the Tigers will practice tomorrow in Omaha. They'll meet with the media, as will the other teams, of course. And then they will take on Kansas a little bit after 7 o'clock on Friday night. So we look forward to getting you ready for all of that here on Sports Talk. Here in the state, a lot of stuff going on. USC football players en masse, about 10 of them, met with the media this morning. Let you hear from quarterback Jake Bentley coming up in just a little bit. He likes what they're doing on offense. He likes the speed with which they are moving the football, the speed with which they are getting up to the line of scrimmage and getting the play off. He likes working with Dan Werner. Let you hear from him coming up a little bit later on tonight here on Sports Talk. Also, USC baseball coach Mark Kingston with some news today as he met with the media. And Kingston telling us that the number one pitcher for the Gamecocks, Adam Hill, is out for this weekend series against Georgia. He's got some shoulder tendonitis. They're going to sit him down for this weekend. So that means they're going to move the freshman John Gilreath into his first SEC start this weekend against the Georgia Bulldogs in Athens on Friday night. Cody Morris will start on Saturday and Ridge Chapman on Sunday. And, of course, last night, wow, USC loses to the Citadel in Columbia with a ninth-inning homer by the Bulldogs. They win it 4-3. Clemson loses at Coastal Carolina, or we should say Coastal Carolina beats Clemson with a walk-off grand slam in the bottom of the ninth in Conway. Not only that, it's Gary Gilmore's 900th win as a baseball coach. So these other teams, you know, we talk so much about USC and Clemson Pro, but these other teams, and, you know, Coastal Carolina should not be looked at by any means as a mid-major or anything like that. They're a national champion just 2 seasons removed from that. So it's no big surprise when they beat somebody like USC or Clemson, or when College of Charleston does, or when the Citadel does now.
It's not like any other sport. I mean, we see teams that's Division III and Division II in hockey, but they're Division I in hockey. Coastal Carolina is a Division I school in baseball. It's one of the top baseball teams in the country, and why not? Look where they're located. I'm not so certain that both teams, and they'll take it, their batters got that ball up in that jet stream that was blowing all over the state last night.
Yeah.
And they got it when it was good. And those wind, hey, you take a wind-blown aided homer anytime you can get it.
Hey, it all counts.
Yes.
As long as it gets out of the ballpark. I don't care what the launch angle is. I don't care what they call the velo exit speed is. You know, a home run is a home run. It doesn't matter if it just barely drifts over the fence or it flies to the moon. It's a home run. And it goes up on the scoreboard, and that's all that counts. So congratulations to those schools on their wins last night. USC will try and pick things up and get something done at Georgia, and Clemson has to go to Louisville this weekend. That's not going to be any easy task for the Tigers at all. So we got all that coming your way and more. Dawn Staley was asked today at a press conference before the USC women leave town to go up to Albany, New York, where they'll be greeted by, I'm sure, several feet of snow, not to mention several thousand UConn fans. I don't know what's worse, several feet of snow or several thousand UConn fans. I think they both suck, if you ask me. But anyway, she was asked if she's interested in the Virginia job, which came open yesterday, when the coach there, Joanna Byrne, I think, she announced her retirement after losing in Columbia. She was asked if she would be interested. She said no. The state newspaper cited sources saying that Virginia will come after Dawn Staley and come after her hard. Now, she's got a $3 million plus buyout in her contract. Of course, she's already among the best paid women's basketball coaches in the country. Her contracts will escalate over the next couple of years in the neighborhood of almost $3 million a year. So, and she loves it here in Columbia. She loves it in South Carolina. She has thrown herself into the community in a number of different ways. So I think it would be hard to peel her away from South Carolina. But then again, coaches have a shelf life normally of about 7 or 8 years at a particular school. Whether they like it or not, they get a little burned out. They seek another challenge. And that's why coaches, you wonder sometimes, why did this coach up and move? Why did they go somewhere else? They just seek something else to give them a thrill. Not saying that's going to be the case with her, but the days of, Krzyzewskis and Dean Smiths and people like that staying 25, 30 years at a school are pretty much gone.
Unless they really are tied to the community, and unless they turn a deaf ear on all this communication that's happened, because people tend to want to change coaches like they change underwear. You have one bad season, and they're ready to go and try something else. And sometimes it just takes you a little bit of a turn to get things reshaped. You have to kind of shake up your staff sometimes. You don't have to shake up the band. You don't have to change the instruments. Maybe just change some of the players that's in the background, the assistants as well as the players on the floor.
Well, one of the primo jobs in the country, normally one of the primo jobs, I don't know how primo it's going to be considering the penalties that they have suffered and how that's going to impact their team with the players that they have lost in recruiting and transferring out. But Louisville is not retaining David Padgett, who was the interim coach this year after Rick Pitino was fired. They're not retaining him. They informed him of that today. So they'll be open for another head coach. And it's Louisville. Mm-hmm. They're going to attract some big-time names, I am sure, and they will play whatever it takes to get who they want. I don't know where they will go, who they will look at. I don't know if they will try and pull away a successful coach at another major program who might have some ties to that part of the country who they think they can get. Will they go down the ladder a little bit and try and find a coach from a lower level who's done extremely well? Or will they go after a major coach who has done well but hasn't done great from the standpoint of Final Fours, tournament runs, things of that nature, but has a solid program?
A coach that may have a few years behind him, but would work at Louisville because of the style he plays and the recruits he could draw, they won't hire him. And it's D'Antoni at Marshall. Mm-hmm. Because he gives his players freedom. And they will carve you up. They get some good shooters and rebounders at Louisville in his system. But knowing Louisville, Tom Crean wasn't good enough for him. And now they don't have to worry about him. Georgia has him. So let's see where they go. But I think D'Antoni's system would work well at Louisville.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they end up doing because, they want to maintain their position as someone that they think they're an equal to Kentucky for the most part. Of course, Kentucky's still playing and still got a chance to win another national championship. But Louisville is an attractive job, a 20,000-seat facility and great fan support, rabid fan support, and we'll see what they end up doing. Want to welcome everybody who's watching us on our Twitter feed tonight. If you're not able to catch us over the airwaves, you've got your iPad with you or your smartphone or whatever mobile device you have. We are streaming Sports Talk now on Twitter, on our Twitter timeline, which is SportsTalkSC. You can listen to us and watch us do our thing wherever you happen to be. And if you have a comment or question, you don't want to call in, though you should. It's always a call-in first show from a communication standpoint. If you want to shoot us a comment on Twitter, we'll be happy to respond to that as well. Phone number is 800-956-7266, 800-956-7266. We'll be right back.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
All right, back we are. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. If you want to join in tonight, love to hear from you. 800-956-7266, the number. Email talkback@sportstalksc.com and on Twitter @SportsTalkSC. That's where you can watch us live, listen to us, and also communicate with us there on Twitter with any comments or questions that you might have. Going to hear from Jake Bentley coming up a little bit later on in the program. Also some comments from Tony Scholes, Citadel baseball coach, gets his first win over USC last night. Also some comments from Mark Kingston coming up tonight as he met with the media earlier today before the Gamecocks head to Georgia this weekend. This is an SC Wild night tonight, so Captain Billy Downer will be with us a little bit later on to talk about the cold outdoors here. The animals have got to be just like, what is going on?
Well,
I just lost my fur because it was 80 degrees, and now I'm freezing my tail off. And that's literal. That's not figurative. It's a real deal. Those guys are freezing out there. So we had a busy show for you tonight. 800-956-7266 is the phone number. In fact, talking about baseball, of course, last night in Conway, they had to wait a couple hours for the weather to clear up before they could play Clemson and Coastal Carolina. Clemson coming off a 3-game sweep at the hands of NC State. Coastal coming off a sweep at Arkansas State. Big midweek matchup between these two teams. Gary Gilmore going for his 900th career win. Monty Lee just trying to get things turned around in a positive direction and get some offense going. Coastal led throughout. It was 5-1 late. Clemson came back and tied it up at 5. They go to the bottom of the 9th, and Coastal gets the bases loaded in a variety of ways, and it set the stage for a potential thrilling finish. And indeed it was, as Coastal Carolina was able to pull it out. Here is the call. Here's the call on the Chanticleer Radio Network from our good buddy Chris Bergen.
Fly ball hit deep to center field, and this ball is off the base of the fence. It's actually gone. It's a grand slam. Grand slam. Coastal wins. Grand slam, Lee Sponseller. And the Chanticleers walking off again.
They've had a few walk-off wins this year. They did the same thing to Oklahoma, and I think they've had like 3 or 4 of those this year. Good call by Chris Bergen there on the Chanticleer Sports Network, and Coastal gets the 9-5 win over Clemson. So all of a sudden, Clemson looked unbeatable there for a while, 16-1. That only loss was to USC, and now they've lost 4 in a row, and they're going to go to Louisville this weekend, and we all know how good Louisville is.
I have to pull out one of Yogi Berra's malaprops. You're going to win a third of your games no matter what you do. You're going to lose a third of your games no matter what you do. It's that third that you have to worry about. And you knew the pendulum was going to swing. That's why Monty Lee stayed on an even keel, even when his team was hot. Do you remember what count it was when he hit that grand slam? Because a batter goes to the plate, and this is the 9th inning. You're saying, look, the guy doesn't want to fall behind. Mm-hmm. He's going to be near the plate. I'm going to look at the spot. I'm looking at my sweet spot, and he puts it in that sweet spot. I'm going to put the barrel on it. Mm-hmm. And that may have what happened last night. The guy you want to get into the plate because you don't want to fall behind because there's no place to put this batter. And the guy jumped on the pitch. You got to give him credit.
Well, in the 9th inning, Coastal got a double to right center to start things off. Then with Woodall at the plate, and he is their big home run hitter, he was walked intentionally. They brought in Ryan Miller. It was Spires who was pitching. They brought in Ryan Miller. He walked the next batter on 4 pitches. So you had a double on a 1-1 pitch. Then you had an intentional walk. Then you had an unintentional walk on 4 pitches. That loads the bases with nobody out. So you're in deep doo-doo if you're Clemson. Nobody out, bases loaded, tie ball game. You kind of feel like you're going to lose some way, somehow.
You want a ground ball, you come to the plate and go to first, get you a double play.
Well, we've seen it happen. And Sponseller homered on a 2-2 pitch.
Ooh, now that's hitting, because sometimes you shorten your swing when it's 2-2 just to make contact.
And from talking with somebody who was there, he told me that ball was smoked. It really got out of there. I'm not sure what the launch angle was, and I don't care what the exit velo was. It was a home run. It was a grand salami. It was a walk-off, whatever you want to call it. That's a big win for Coastal Carolina as they improved their record to, I believe, 16 and let's see if I can find that here very quickly. I think they're like 16 and 7, I think. So congrats to the Chanticleers for their big win last night. A couple of other notes, and our lines are open, 800-956-7266. The Citadel basketball team is leaking like a very poorly constructed boat. A third player today announced he is leaving. This is another good player, too. Tariq Simmons, freshman guard out of Keenan High School, is headed out of the Citadel. Just said that he told the state newspaper, it's a great school, but it's not for everybody. I think I'll have a better opportunity elsewhere. So he plans to transfer to another D1 school, have to sit out a year because of the rules. He said USC, one of the schools he's looking at, Florida Gulf Coast, UNC Charlotte, and Wake Forest. He averaged 7 points, a couple of rebounds per game this year, had a season-high 22 against Virginia Tech. So Frankie Johnson announced earlier this week he's leaving the program, and there was another player earlier in the week to announce that he would be leaving the Citadel. Let me tell you who that is. That is Robert Johnson, 6'8" freshman. So the roster of transfers across the country is starting to grow. I'm keeping a list. Look, what they have last year, 800 and something transfers. Yeah. I'm not keeping all 800, but I'm trying to keep a list as I run across. Did I see today that the outstanding shooter from NC State is transferring?
I think he was
Yurts. What's his name? Omar Yurtseven. Is that right?
I think that's
the guy who played so well against Clemson, outside shooter, just a freshman. I think he's transferring.
To quote Tubby Smith, you're teaching them to quit.
Yeah.
And that's what happens to young people in college, even if they're in academics. It's just like I was speaking to a young lady years ago, and she said, I transferred to this school because I thought, I could do better there. Then I transferred to another school. And by the time I got to be a junior, I figured it out. It wasn't the schools, it was me. Well, see, that's what happened to these players. If they stick it out, they'll grow.
My little list here, just what I've compiled off Twitter. There's 3 players transferring from Bowling Green. The entire Pittsburgh team apparently is transferring. They're talking like 7 or 8 guys are bolting. Pitt, one of the more well-known who is leaving is Jared Wilson Frame, the 6'5" forward. He's heading out. Donovan Mitchell, 6'8" player from Wake Forest. He's transferring. Western Michigan is losing a couple. Wisconsin's losing a 6'11" big who's transferring out. Colorado's losing a 6'9" big. So, yeah, that time of year. Of course, Jalik Felton from North Carolina looking for a new home as well. So it's just that time of year. The basketball season winds to a close. Coaches get fired, coaches get hired, and players transfer. And there's really nothing the NCAA can do about it. I mean, they're not afraid. These guys aren't afraid to go and sit out a year and find themselves a better situation, they think.
And I think it probably bodes well for them to keep the rule as it is, Corn, because if they can transfer without losing a year, it would be a zoo. You might as well have the waiver wire.
Well, I agree with you, but they're talking about it. They're liberalizing so many things in sports when it comes to that, trying to appease the players and keep them happy, whatever they can do to keep them happy so they don't have to pay them. That's what they're trying to do. We'll give you this, but don't ask us to pay you. Be back in a moment.
Back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
Wednesday edition of Sports Talk from downtown Columbia. Thank you for being with us tonight, wherever you have dialed us up as you're heading home. You've tuned over to us. We thank you for that. You're watching us on our Twitter feed on our website, SportsTalkSC.com. You can connect to Twitter, our Twitter feed right there on our website, SportsTalkSC.com, or directly to our Twitter timeline on Twitter at SportsTalkSC. We also have our stream still rolling on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. So if you want to watch us there, listen to us there. Or over the radio, of course, always a welcomed opportunity for you there to be tuned into one of our Sports Talk affiliates. But, of course, if you lose us for whatever reason, you can find us one of these other ways. 800-956-7266, our phone number. Email talkback at sportstalksc.com and on Twitter at SportsTalkSC. Is in Omaha. He has notified us that he made it to Omaha. Once again, the Sports Talk Pinto doing its thing and getting us to our location. He'll be joining us in a little bit to tell us what it's like in Omaha as he begins to prepare for covering Clemson. Tomorrow, the Tigers will work out in the arena there in Omaha. It's a beautiful building right in downtown Omaha, right across the street from TD Ameritrade Park with the play of the College World Series. That whole area of Omaha is really, really nice. It's a few blocks down from the downtown district. And if you know Omaha at all, Omaha sits right next to the Nebraska River, right across the river from Council Bluffs, Iowa. And that is a Nebraska River, is it not? Nebraska River? Does that sound right?
It's a river, I know.
It's a river, and it's big. It's a big, fast river. I was there a few years ago for the World Series. I think it was must have been 11 or 12. They had all that flooding in Iowa, and all that water was moving south from Iowa into Nebraska and heading towards the Mississippi, I guess, feeding the Mississippi. Remember that big flood?
Mm-hmm.
And I walked down by that river's edge, and it was scary how high the water was and how fast the water was rolling. What wasn't funny was that there's a nuclear power plant about 15, 20 miles outside of Omaha. And, of course, it comes on the news that they're worried that this flooding is going to do something to that power plant and cause a little nuclear issue there in Nebraska. We were not real excited about that occurring, of course. Fortunately, it did not. It was a mess. Everywhere you walked around Omaha, you were walking in water and mud and things like that. They had the bags up all over downtown trying to protect businesses from flooding and things like that. So, but it's a nice city, and it's hosting the Sweet 16 for the Midwest Regional, and you'll see a lot of shots of downtown Omaha, I'm sure, from CBS when the coverage begins. Is that on CBS on Friday night? Is that where it's going to be, or is it on TBS?
It might be
not on True TV, right?
It will be on CBS. Kansas. True TV is over.
Right.
They're only for the first
two rounds.
Couple of rounds.
Yeah. I got no problem with True TV. I don't watch True TV as a regular television viewer. I couldn't tell you one show that's on there, but I don't mind tuning over there to watch the tournament.
Yeah, that's primarily why I'm there. That's why they try to entice you to go over there so that at least they can do all their promos in if you want to go back there. It used to be Court TV, remember?
Is that what it was?
Yeah, that
Court
was
TV?
Court TV.
Yeah, I didn't watch that either.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't know anybody who was on there, thank goodness, and they never called me to be on there, so that was a good thing as well. 800-956-7266 as we look ahead to Clemson and Kansas. So what do you think? Can the Tigers beat the Jayhawks? That's a stupid question. Of course they can. The likelihood of Clemson beating Kansas, would you say it is 50-50? Less than 50-50? If so, how much less than 50-50?
I would lean edging toward 50-50 if this thing was in another venue. If they had them on the West Coast or East or whatever, but they're right down smack dab in the Midwest in Nebraska's wheelhouse. I mean, in Kansas,
you know, you're
wheelhouse.
Clemson. You're Clemson. You have played in Chapel Hill. You have played. Didn't play in Durham this year, but you have played in Charlottesville. You have played in the Carrier Dome against much more rowdy crowds against you than you're going to face.
I think Kansas's crowd is still as rowdy. I can still remember when Dave Odom was coaching South Carolina and Kansas took over the Colonial Life Arena. I mean, they had fans from licensed play. I said, these people drove all the way over here I said, these people are crazy as Kentucky fans.
Mm-hmm.
And they are. I had I think my niece's fiance at the time, he had a roommate from Kentucky. He would sometimes, they worked in Greenville. He would drive to see a midweek night game to watch his Wildcats in Lexington and drive back the whole night to Greenville.
Mm-hmm.
That's how crazy some of those fans are.
Well, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. I know the Kansas fans are incredibly loyal, and they pack Allen Fieldhouse every time they play. I went in Allen Fieldhouse one time. It was empty. It was during the daytime. It was actually the year that South Carolina played in the NCAA tournament with Dave Odom. I think that was 2001. And they lost on a Friday, the first game at 12 o'clock to Memphis. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I couldn't fly back till Monday. That was the package. Had to stay over. Had to kill all this time in Kansas City. So I hopped in the car and drove to Lawrence and walked around the Kansas campus, which is surprisingly very hilly. I did not expect to find a hilly campus, but that's what you have in Lawrence. And I walked around and ran into Allen Fieldhouse, and it's open. I just walked right in, and I mean, it's just like an airplane hangar. It's like a huge airplane hangar with about 16,000 seats, and all that history, and of course the colors of Kansas, which are what, blue and white. I think
it's blue and red,
and some white.
Mm-hmm.
And but you know, the history just drips out of that place. It's one of those buildings that you never want to see go away, like Cameron, like what old buildings are left like that? You got Allen Fieldhouse, you've got Cameron, you got where Butler plays. There aren't too many left like that to carry that kind of nostalgia and history with them.
Because everybody wants to have that Wi-Fi wired in there and all the big scoreboards and that sort of thing.
How about just have a good team that plays good basketball, and you actually go and support your team because you love the sport and you love your team.
I will say
you don't go there for the kiss cam. You don't go there to watch the babies crawl on the floor. You go there for the basketball experience. That'd be a nice change for today's sports world.
Fringe fan. I know it's a different team now, but if I was Clemson, and I'm not so certain they did this, the way Arizona State's guards carved up Kansas in Fog Island back in December, if I was Clemson's guards, I'd just look and say, because remember now, Oklahoma State beat them in there this year. Arizona State beat them in there. I think they may have suffered as many losses in Fog Island as they've had in 3 years just in this one season.
Well, I think that Clemson with their guard trio can hang with Kansas and Kansas's guard trio. They have three very good perimeter players as well. Probably has more size, Kansas does, in their backcourt than Clemson does. When you line them up side by side, they're going to have some advantage there. But I think Clemson, those three guards right now, believe they're the best trio in the country. I mean, that's how they feel. They feel like every shot's going down. They feel like they can't be guarded. They feel like they can beat you off the dribble, and they're very unselfish. And how far out do you guard Gabe DeVoe? Do you come out 25 feet? I mean, you come out 30 feet. You guard him when he comes across the timeline. You have to. You have to respect his outside shooting ability, and that opens up everything else for everybody else.
The one key thing in this tournament, as we've seen that winners do, is they make the extra pass. And in Clemson, with Gabe DeVoe, he would be a great diversion, because when utilizing the pump fake, you can either kick it out to another person cross court for a three or throw it inside. So, and then don't be worried about beating Kansas pretty. Make it ugly. Drive to the basket when they run you off the three-point line. Get them in foul trouble.
All right, we'll be right back. Welcome back into Sports Talk, everybody. South Carolina Radio Network from downtown Columbia. Phil Kornblut and the Professor Tom Hayes, along with Brian Leonard. Will Pelagic is in Omaha. We'll be joining him in just a moment here on Sports Talk to find out how things feel out there in Nebraska. Check out foundersfcu.com. Learn how they can assist you in all of your financial needs. Willie P. has made his way to the big city in Nebraska, which is Omaha, about 45 miles from Lincoln. Unfortunately, this time of year, things are calmer out there weather-wise in terms of the tornadoes and all that. During the summer, when the College World Series is ongoing, you have to keep your eyes open for that kind of weather. Don't think you'll be facing that this week out in Omaha as Will Pelagic joins us now. And glad you had a great flight. So you've made it there to Omaha. You're setting up your home base, ready to cover the Tigers. And what is the weather like this time of year in Omaha?
You know, it's a little nippy, Corn. They'd had a little bit of snow here recently, but it's all cleared out now. Temperatures in the 40s and 50s. They said it was a beautiful 52 degrees. I don't know if I would necessarily agree with that characterization of it, but as you could say, though, it is calm and it is clear, which is all you can basically ask for this time of year.
Well, I know you just got there not too long ago, and you're probably just getting checked into the hotel and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know, did you see many fans heading out your way through the Atlanta airport going to Omaha for the Sweet 16?
Not only did I see colleagues of ours in the media, but I did see a few Tiger Paws as well on our flight. A very full flight, by the way. There's only two flights that leave Omaha or leave for Omaha out of Atlanta. One's around 3:20 and the other one leaves in the evening. We're probably leaving a day earlier than most fans would, but, you know, when you talk to people around here, as I do, you know, as I have here over the course of since I've landed, a lot of people, when they tell them I'm here covering Clemson, they're like, man, Clemson really didn't expect to be here. And I think that's kind of there's a newness to Clemson. And I almost would draw the same comparisons like you and I have been drawing when it comes to what South Carolina went through last year in New York. The fact that this was kind of an unexpected surprise. And you know, a lot of people are taking advantage of the fact that, you know, you don't know how often a run of this nature can come around. And that's kind of the feel, not just for Clemson people who are making the trip, but those who are receiving those of Clemson attire here in Omaha.
Yeah, I think to the casual basketball fan, Clemson is a huge surprise. Those who've paid attention realize that Clemson's got a really good team this year. And the question is, as you talk about Clemson basketball and South Carolina basketball, and what the fans, of course, want, they want more than just a team that's really good every couple of years that makes this strong run. They want a program that gives them runs in the NCAA tournament every year, at least get to the second round or get to the Sweet 16 on a pretty regular basis. And then if you get to the Elite Eight or the Final Four, that's your special year. What we've got, of course, are a couple of teams, a couple of programs that produce good teams, great teams every so often. Now, I think Clemson, if they hold these guys together who are eligible to come back and play next year, they've got a chance to be a repeat performer next year with everybody coming back except DeVoe and the people that they're adding, if they can keep all these people together.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the future of this program holds, because you're going to have, you know, again, that gaping hole in the offense with DeVoe, and you want to see somebody kind of step into that role, whether it's somebody like Amir Sims, whether it's an A.J. Oliver, or even somebody from the periphery who hasn't necessarily shown up this year, or even an incoming freshman. You wonder where all that offense is going to come. And the other thing, too, just in the immediate focus, looking towards tomorrow or towards Friday's game against Kansas, you know, they will need, you know, it's not going to just be the triumvirate in the backcourt that needs to get things done. They need to get a representative scoring effort from somebody outside of Marquise Reed, Gabe DeVoe, and Shelton Mitchell, whether that's Elijah Thomas, whether that's Amir Sims, Mark Donnell, David Scara, you name it. They need, I don't want to say the number, I don't think the number is anything more than 15, but they need between 15 and 20 points from somebody not named those three, in addition to the representative effort from those three, in order to win against Kansas and whoever they win the Duke-Syracuse game.
And I think, as I said before, I don't think Clemson has to win a beauty contest here, because I think one of the things you have to do with Kansas, because of their short numbers, is get them in foul trouble. And they have trouble defensively anyway. So even though you like to have the three, that's your weapon, don't be afraid to pump fake at that three-point line and take it to the hole. If you can win it at the free throw line, this is something I wouldn't have said about Clemson teams years ago, because it was an adventure every time they told the stripe. But this year they are very respectable at the free throw line, and they can win it there as much as they can from the three-point arc.
Yeah, they need to be able to show the propensity to penetrate and let that Kansas defense collapse in on them and foul them, because that is certainly a strength of theirs. I almost feel like the game plan here is very similar to the game plan that Clemson used against Auburn. Run them up and down the floor, use a lot of guys, use something like your depth to an advantage. Get guys in there early, get them familiar and comfortable with the game, and see who you can count on down the stretch in key moments. And like I said, there are going to be moments where you wonder whether or not Clemson will fall in love with the three too much, but they also have to show diversity in their offense. And if they show diversity in their offense, if they show a post presence from Elijah Thomas, if they show a driving ability from Marquise Reed, if they show something else other than the guarded threes, this is going to be a game that Clemson, I don't want to say that they can control, but it's one that they'll be able to spar with Kansas in.
Talking with Will Pelagic, who is in Omaha to begin our coverage of Clemson over the rest of this week and perhaps into the weekend if the Tigers can get by Kansas on Friday night. We have to remember, too, we talk so much about offense. Don't forget about defense. And Clemson played great defense against Auburn, forced their shooters into some very difficult shots, and forced Auburn into a terrible shooting night. Now, they're going to have to stop the penetration of Devontae Graham. And the thing that Kansas will have over Clemson in the backcourt is a bit of a size advantage. 6'2", 6'8", 6'3", their big three guards give Kansas a bit of an advantage there. So staying out of foul trouble and defending those guys and preventing Graham in particular, who's their playmaker and sets up the other guys, preventing him from penetrating into the lane and dishing off and leading to good shots, that's going to be key for whoever draws that assignment.
Well, one thing that's a favorable thing for Clemson is the fact that all of Bill Self's stuff is not very complex. It's in every coaching manual. It's in every handbook that you see for offensive plays. It's stuff that's in basically the coaching echelon. There's nothing that he runs that either Brad Brownell hasn't seen or that his players, especially the more experienced ones, haven't seen before. Where they win is they win on talent, and they win because they have multiple scoring options in that four-out offense. And again, we talked to Blair Kirkhoff yesterday about the fact that this is not necessarily your typical Kansas team, because usually they've got a big man at the four who can also score from inside and outside. Instead, they use a guy that's a stretch four in Speed Mikhailuk, who can basically be that fourth scorer from the outside edge. That's something where they present you with a lot of different options, and you need a lot to go wrong for them in order to beat them. But the one thing about it is, again, it's not a complicated scheme. It's something that Clemson should be very familiar with their defensive pressure as well.
Now, I think probably this may sound trite, Will, but I saw it last year in the body language. As South Carolina went on their run last year, those players were playing with intensity, but they actually were having fun at the same time. I saw that in Clemson's body language, both when the game in New Mexico State got tight and early on against Auburn. This team stays relaxed, plays their game, stays within close to Kansas or have the lead. It will be Kansas who will panic because they're expected to go further. So if they can, have that mindset to have fun but play with intensity, they can win this game mentally and on the scoreboard.
All right, Will, Drover tonight, or is that tomorrow night?
If I can get in tonight, I'm going to try.
Have fun. Talk to you tomorrow.
Thanks, guys.
Will Pelagic out in Omaha covering the Tigers. We'll be right back.